lecture recital on mazurkas by Chopin and Scriabin. It may sound superficial to compare them, as we all know that Scriabin was hugely inspired and influenced by Chopin. They were both unparalleled piano composers by their devotion and works to the instrument itself. They both expressed themselves to the fullest through the language of piano. Scriabin wrote almost every genre that Chopin left, but we all need to come to an agreement that Scriabin's music is unique, individual, and personal, with its own language and colors. My mission today is to bring you my findings on the specific sources that Scriabin absorbed from Chopin, and also how Scriabin individualized his own mazurkas. The first half of this recital is me talking and demonstrating, and the second half will be me playing a collection of their mazurkas. As you all may know already, mazurka was originally a Polish folk dance. Mazurs, originating from the Mozavia region, where Chopin spent his childhood there, it was greatly influenced by the culture there. Triple meters had always been the dominance of mazurs, with rhythmic displacements emphasizing on either beat 2 or beat 3. If you take a look on this example from Grove, you could see it could be in the A, it could be go as dum ba bum bam 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 on beat 3, or on beat 2 bam 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 bam. And no doubt there were different tempi in this Polish folk dance, mainly categorized in 3 types. The first one is called operette. It's a fast and lively dance with spinning and joyful characters, irregular rhythmic accents. And the example I have for you today is Opus 7, number 3. The second type is Huyaviek. Really is the opposite from operette. Slow tempo, longer length of phrases, song-like and lyrical character, and more importantly, it always projects both simplicity and dignity, full of imagination with wicker accent. I have 2 examples. The first one would be it's Chopin Opus 17, number 4. And I have another example, which is an early mazurka, Opus 6, number 2. And the third type is called mazur. To sum up, it is a dance of middle ground with moderate tempo. The mood is still lively with the grand and maestoso feeling. And I think the perfect example for this one would be Chopin Opus 59, number 1. traditionally combines two of the three dances in a single mazurka, usually a kuyaviak and a mazurka. He ingeniously transformed the folk materials to be a highly artistic genre of dance music that we sometimes tend to think that he invented it. However, the dance was already quite popular in high society of Paris sometime before Chopin moved there. For example, Maria Zimanovska published her 24 mazurkas in 1825, the year when Chopin wrote his first mazurka. Chopin had her mazurkas in print at home, and Chopin regularly attended Zimanovska's piano recital. One of his letters that I quoted here, Chopin wrote, quote, Mrs. Zimanovska gives a concert this week. It is to be on Friday. I shall be there for sure, and will tell you about the reception and playing, end quote. Chopin wrote a total of 57 mazurkas. Within these mazurkas, there are 8 mazurkas that bear no opus number. From the opus 6 to the opus 63, they were all published in print during his lifetime. Opus 67 and 68 were published by Julian Fontana in 1856, who was a Polish pianist, writer, and translator, and he was a close friend with Chopin. Among the 57 mazurkas Chopin wrote, 29 of them are actually in major keys, more than half, which was surprising to me. I hear melancholy in every single one of them, even if it is in major key. Chopin wrote his first mazurka at the age of 14, and the last mazurka 2 weeks before his death. For me, these mazurkas are really his diaries. Russian composer Alexander Scriabin was born 23 years after Chopin's death. He wrote 21 mazurkas in total, and there are 3 sets. There are 10 mazurkas in Opus 3, 9 in Opus 25, and 2 in the last set, Opus 40. These mazurkas were all finished at the end of the so-called Scriabin's first period in 1903. Then he stopped writing any more mazurkas. The earlier mazurkas show a lot of Chopin's influence, and the later mazurkas were more original. Now, I would like to go ahead to present examples of specific comparisons of their mazurkas to show you the similarities first and how Scriabin learned from Chopin. In this first example of Chopin's Opus 7 number 2, you can see the left-hand pattern, which is very typical. That tends to go as leaving the first beat empty. And if I show you, hands together. Scriabin favored the similar Latin pattern as well. They both begin with the phrasing structure of 4+4, unfolding a dialogue-like question and response. The next comparison demonstrates a compositional device that is widely used in Chopin's writing, especially mazurka, which is the melodic imitation that creates polyphonic textures, layers, and voices. Let's hear the Chopin first, the famous Opus 50, number 3. Scriabin used the identical imitation in his mazurka. This next example of parallelism is one of my favorites. That its existence is subtle to notice, but the writing style almost happens in every mazurka, which is the unresolved and unsettled opening that delays the tonic arrival. It almost serves as a pickup gesture. Let's hear the Chopin, Opus 24, number 4, begin. Begins at the end of the example that I showed here. Scriabin favored this procedure and opening as well in his Opus 25 number. The harmonic uncertainty at the outset with the sense of pickup always gives the mazurka tremendous effect of nostalgia and sense of wondering where to go, both musically and emotionally. The following example is not a consistent device of similarity, but it is obvious that Scriabin was modeling on Chopin's mazurka Opus 33, number 4. Both these two mazurkas are written in the structure of A-B-A-C-A rondo form, with the same key of B minor. If we have a closer look on the thematic motifs here, both contain exact mordents on beat 2 in the first measure that prolongs the beat rhythmically. In the Scriabin, in the Chopin first. Mordents here, and then Scriabin. And both have the resolution emphasized beat 1 in the next measure as well. In the Chopin, in the Scriabin. And the two themes in full versions would be Chopin, Scriabin. The middle section of Chopin's mazurka is often very chordal, and Scriabin followed the tradition if we listen to the rhythmic pulse. The Chopin, and Scriabin. Even more interesting is how both the two chordal sections end chromatically down and back to the theme, strikingly similar. In the Chopin, in the Scriabin, for this example, I would like to play them first before I talk. First, the Chopin Opus 41, number 2. And Scriabin. The music almost says it all. Both excerpts have the quality of chorales and prayers, but more than that, the rhythmic shape, the pacing, the dotted rhythm at the end, The question and answer sequence marks another authentic parallelism. Scribing Opus 3 number 2 is probably the most Chopinesque mazurka by its sounding. If I show you the first two measures, the upward motion of the melodies in the beginning really reflects Chopin Opus 33 number 1. These two openings of mazurkas are textbook examples of how mazurka always possessed the quality of storytelling in the beginning. Chopin's very last mazurka, Opus 68 number 4, is special to all. Very personal, introverted, and intimate, full of chromaticism, and yet with simplicity. For me, this mazurka is reserved for himself. It is his last glance to his home, Poland. Let me show you the 4 measures in this last mazurka. In the excerpt here, the large leap of interval that is surrounded by the chromatic turn here really inspired Scriabin's Opus 25, number 9. The turn here is the exact inverted form of the Chopin. Scriabin loved this falling and rising melodic contour so much that he continued to make it happen in his only piano concerto, beginning. So what you hear here in the turn came from his mazurka. Now, I would like to turn to the parts that Scriabin's mazurkas are different from Chopin's. Here is the first version preserved in an autograph of Chopin's Opus 7 number 2. You could see drones with interval of fifths in the bass that imitate the instrument bagpipe in the traditional mazurka dance. Chopin literally wrote out the Polish word for bagpipe in the score. He wrote dada. Scriabin made the dada in his mazurka less noticeable by mixing the ostinato with the broken chord arrangement. That it consistently supports the bass in this mazurka. The second thing is the irregular phrasing structure. Throughout Scriabin's mazurka, he strived to escape the rhythmic tradition that Chopin initiated. In Opus 25, number 1, Vivace Scherzando section, the folk melodies and the rhythms are idiomatic, but the accents make the phrasing irregular. I put the red boxes and the blue boxes here. In the beginning, the red boxes show how it first emphasized on beat 1 with 2-bar gesture. It's emphasizing on beat 1 and then 2-bar gesture. And this Scriabin surprises with a sudden switch to beat 2 accents with only 1-bar gesture. The phrase structure in Chopin mazurka, on the other hand, it's always very, very symmetrical. Scriabin could sometimes offer us an entire mazurka with no accent at all. It indicated the dance-like feature in a hidden way. Scrapping often prolongs beat 2 with long notes naturally by his rhythmic patterns. If I guide you through in this example, in the beginning, it goes like this. Long note. It's always on beat 2, you see. In the third measure, it's all triplets in the right hand, but he put that grace note in order to delay that. When you listen to Scriabin's mazurka, sometimes you forgot it is a dance piece, with all those freedom in time and imagination. But Scriabin never forgets the spirit of a mazurka, it is still a dance. This example also shows how Scriabin preferred having intensive chromaticism in both hands. I circle them in red on the score. Having both hands going up chromatically. Chopin sometimes explicitly write out the word rubato to indicate tempo flexibility. Scriabin pushed the limits of a mazurka's tempo stability, for example, in Opus 25, number 1. You could see he wrote, I circled them in green. He wrote con effetto and molto ritenuto in the first measure, and then a accelerando in second measure, and then a tempo in third measure, and then rubato in measure 5, and then measure 7, crescendo with allargando. This kind of drastic change of tempo and mood never happened in Chopin's mazurka. I would say it is almost fantasy-like. But this character fantasy might be Scriabin's way out to redefine mazurkas, to make them his own things. Earlier I mentioned that both Scriabin and Chopin often wrote the opening with harmonic ambiguity as pickup before the tonic arrival. Scriabin added and used fermata at the outset to further achieve this effect of delaying the theme entrance. In this example, you can see fermata in the first measure, and it goes like this. Along with the harmony, it created a storytelling atmosphere for mazurka to let the story begins. Overall, Scriabin's mazurka's textures are much thicker than Chopin's, with fuller sonorities, such as this example with thick chords and octave doublings. Another example is how he also frequently used extreme registers of the keyboard. Scriabin with no doubt would depart from the world of relative modulation. And for example, in this excerpt that I showed, it starts with the key of D major. And then modulating to D flat major. This is just one example. Scriabin's last mazurka sets one of the many clear examples of how he favored wider interval like 7s, 9s, and sometimes even 10s 11th chord. But more importantly, I would like to focus on his motivic gesture. His late mazurkas are somewhat reminiscent to Chopin's late mazurkas with lighter texture and simplicity. But in Chopin's very last mazurka, you could still hear a long melodic line, lyrical, like bel canto. But in Scriabin, and in this example, which is Scriabin's very last mazurka, it is still very singable, but with more effect of recitativo or speaking. The phrase is highly motivic, and I think that is Scriabin's own voice. In addition, there is always the deep structure of abstracted horizontal line in Scriabin's music. If I play them out in the red. To conclude my presentation today, I have to situate myself and share with you the quote from Fabian Bauer's book, who is an important biographer of Scriabin. In the book, he wrote, start quote, Scriabin once reduced to tears, blurted out, "What if my music sounds like Chopin? It's not stolen, it's mine," end quote. Yes, Scriabin was inspired by Chopin, but from my perspective, not a single page of his music plagiarizes even from the first period. In Chopin, mazurkas are dances of nostalgia, and mazurkas in Scriabin, for me, they are dances of fantasies. It has been a great pleasure to be listening to all their mazurkas recently, to locate these hidden gems of similarities and differences. I think it is meaningful to discover these details. On one hand, it has its academic values. On the other hand, it gives me tremendous satisfaction as someone who loves their music so much. The more you listen to Scriabin, the more you found his mazurkas as distinct departures from Chopin. But there is one common thing that you would always hear in both composers' mazurkas, which is the melancholy and bittersweet feeling, which I think is the soul of mazurka. There is actually an important Polish word for this complicated feeling, which is called żal. According to Liszt, żal was the only word Chopin would use to describe his muse and inspiration. Liszt wrote in his 1853 biography, start of quote, he wrote, "Whatever might have been Chopin's transitory pleasures, he had never been free from a feeling which might almost be said to form the soil of his heart, and for which he could find no appropriate expression except in his own language, no other possessing a term equivalent to the Polish word żal. He repeated it again and again. Just like the mazurkas, both composers repeated the themes again and again as if they're searching and longing for something. For the program of second half, I tried to connect the mazurkas by the ending and starting note, so it would be great if you could wait until the end clap. I'm sure I already run over time, but before I let the intermission begin, I would like to express my gratitude and to say thank you to my teacher, Dr. Baruch Meir, and also to Professor Hannah Previson for their guidance and support. Thank you all so much. Thank you.